Well, the pandemic has set students more than a year behind in school, and now in some states, the decision for a child to repeat a grade is not in the hands of their parents. Fox's Laura Ingle is in Malvern, New York with the story. Laura.
Well, good afternoon. You know, this last year for kids has been a very rough one, to say the least. And there are some estimates that many children are as far behind as a year or more when it comes to math and reading. And of course, that is very difficult for everybody involved, children, teachers, parents, and as many parents and educators across the U.S. work to bring struggling students up to speed. They are also deciding if a child should move on to the next grade, a very difficult decision. 17 states across the country, along with Washington, D.C., all have mandatory retention laws for third graders, meaning if kids don't meet reading requirements, they could be forced to repeat the grade. But in a year of virtual teaching and learning, many parents and teachers across the country say this should be the year where exceptions are made.
I am hoping that our voices are heard and that we can support our students to the best of our ability and not be punitive at the end of third grade when we know this hasn't been the normal experience.
In Tennessee, the mandatory retention law was passed in January of this year. The National Assessment of Educational Process reports that 34% of Tennessee third graders are not meeting English language standards. As some lawmakers say, that proves the point that some kids need to repeat a grade.
It's unfair to continue to move them in grade levels and get them graduated in high school potentially and not be prepared to enter the workforce or go to college. And so there needs to be a line drawn in the sand where we at least say, you know what, we expect more out of our education.
Now, one long-term study by the Annie E. Casey Foundation found that students who were not proficient in reading at the end of third grade were 4 times more likely to drop out of high school than proficient readers. And some parents say, you know, despite all of this, they still want to be the ones to make the choice. Back to you.
Laura Ingle, thank you so much. Well, here now to react is Angela Morabito, a campus reform fellow and the former U.S. Department of Education press secretary. Angela, so glad to have you here. I hate that we're talking about this mess when it comes to kids either moving on or not moving on, but it strikes me that it's another one of those situations where parents' hands seem to be tied by the bureaucracy.
Exactly. And at the Department of Ed, we knew full well that no one knows a student better than their parents. Every child is unique, and the more decisions that are made by bureaucrats and taken away from the family, the worst outcomes become. We've also seen that it's not this pandemic that has caused learning loss. It's prolonged shutdowns that were unnecessary. The Trump administration was ready to have schools open almost a year ago. Schools should have been open for full-time in-person instruction since last fall. The learning losses that we're seeing right now were entirely preventable, and in some cases, they may follow kids for the rest of their lives.
So the last one was about reading. Let's talk about math for a second, Angela. We've got the state of Virginia doing away with accelerated math programs up to the 11th grade as part of a, quote, equity-focused plan. Your thoughts on doing away with the higher level math?
It's harmful, it is unjust and anti-student, and it is exactly why support for school choice is reaching all-time highs. Parents should have the option not to send their child to a place that says, as a matter of policy, we're going to deny your talents and abilities, and we're going to reduce everyone to the lowest common denominator. This is a backwards policy that is not going to stop in high school, right? Campus reform has seen how colleges are lowering their standards year after year. High schools are lowering their standards to the point where a high school diploma, it used to mean something. It is now a paper participation trophy. This ultimately degrades the American workforce. So we're looking at a domino effect that's going to be set off by education bureaucrats.
Angela, this is the big issue to me. You look at these two issues combined, and from the parents' perspective, they're left feeling like they're caught in the wash. There's a system that makes decisions about what their kids do or don't do. And in so many cases, they feel like they have absolutely no voice in this. To me, this seems like if there's ever been a moment for the school choice movement to accelerate, it's got to be now.
That's right. And we know that learning loss is not the same across all students and across all places. Places where schools reopened or places that actually invested in quality distance learning at the beginning of COVID, those students are generally still on track. But it is low income and minority students who are hurt the worst. And where do those students live? They live in major cities where the teachers' unions have insisted on keeping schools closed. Parents deserve options, and this pandemic has showed everyone what kids are learning or are not learning when they go to school every day. Parents are more aware now than they have ever been, and it is past time for parents to realize that they should be talking to their local school board, that these decisions are often made closer to home than people realize, and they can stand up and have an impact and demand better for their kids.
We were just talking earlier in the show about Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and she's extending the mask mandate. She's pushing it down to kids as young as 2 to 4 years old. You think about those students in school with the mask. We focus on math and reading, but there's also this relational component to education, I think, is quite a bit at risk as a result of these policies, again, at the state level, not the local level, at the state level.
Right, and I am begging Democratic governors to do what they've been telling us to do for the past year, which is this: trust the science. The CDC now says that 3 feet of distance between children is just fine to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Studies are showing that children are really unlikely to contract or spread the disease. And again, this is not new science that just came out 20 minutes ago. We've known this for nearly a year, and it is past time for teachers' unions and the government that unfortunately they exert a lot of control over to admit what is true and what is best for students.
Angela Morabito, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your perspective today. We appreciate it.